We've got to find a better way for them to collaborate and integrate all of these various locations that are out there in the field.
Precisely.
Okay.
Yeah, we had...
you use Google Apps and the Google App Stack to do that.
Yep, they had an Exchange server that was at end of life, needed to figure out what to do. We came in as their outsourced managed service provider, so we do everything from front-end user support all the way through the back office support, administration, project work. Basically, we are their IT department from end to end. And when we sat down and looked at the various options, Google Apps just really rose to the top as the most cost-effective. And at first it was just most cost-effective, and then as we got into it, we realized how powerful this could be, and to begin to re-engineer the business process, which plays well to one of the things we're finding in the industry as a whole for managed service providers. The evolution from just providing services or fixed fee services is starting to move more towards you need to be consultative. You need to understand the business that you're serving and what specifically is going to be helpful for them to accomplish whatever their business is. So in this particular case of Second Wind, what can they use that'll help them ultimately sell more exercise equipment? And in this particular case, building out more infrastructure internally didn't really make a lot of sense. Moving this piece out to the cloud made a lot more sense. So it got us involved in more of a consultative approach of looking at, okay, how are you collaborating today? What tools are you using? What are you doing, and where are there gaps? And like I had just mentioned a moment ago, and having some of the differences between the end users or the employees and the management is a huge gap. And now with a tool like this, they can solve that.
You know, I got to tell you that, so it almost sounds like you sort of look for a way to help them save money. My guess is, I mean, you said end-of-life Exchange server.
Yep.
So that presumes they're using Gmail now instead. Yep. Okay.
Google Apps. Yep.
And I know we were talking the other day, and you said, well, yeah, we used to charge them $120 a month to maintain their Exchange server, and now we're just charging them $120 a month to maintain their...
Nothing's changed with their agreement.
Nothing's changed with their agreement. You already had a managed service agreement in place with them.
Yep.
You just said, you know what, the whole Office stack, you know, just needs to move out into the cloud. Then we have a position to be able to create collaboration amongst all of the outside locations. And then you guys started getting involved and started creating, well, here's a question. You said you started getting in and looking at how they were doing business, and you actually got involved at that layer. That's not a layer a lot of people ever get involved in. How hard was that for you to transform or to go from never doing that to saying, well, we can start doing that? I mean, talk to me about that a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's a really great question. What I've found is that, especially in the SMB space, there's a distinct need for managed service providers to start offering services at that level. And so we weren't doing a lot of that. And as we started to ask the kind of business questions of like, well, how are you talking to your employees? How are you including them as part of your corporate communications? They were yearning for us to sit at the table with the management and help figure some of these problems out, because they don't have all the answers. And for us to come along from an outside perspective, having a better understanding of the technology and the various options, there wasn't much pushback or barriers at all. It became very quickly a let's sit down. Yeah, exactly.
They're dying for it.
Exactly.
They said no one's ever really done that. They just sort of put the application in and said, just go ahead
Here's
and
Exchange,
use it.
there you go, and walk away. And so what it's done is it's actually created a much deeper relationship, much more of a trusted advisor relationship between Augusto and our client, because now not only are we taking care of the operation side of IT, we're now stepping up and rising above that to start looking at how to help make sure the IT operations are really fully supporting the business goals and objectives.
Okay, so here's the big question. Here's the $24,000 question. You say that to most of the people in the IT nation, and they're going to say, we don't know how to do that. We know how to do infrastructure. We know how to put things in, patch them, fix them, keep them running, get them connected to the internet. You know, we kind of, no offense, we kind of don't like you, Google, and the idea, I'm just being honest, don't like the idea of you trying to put stuff up in the cloud, because, you know, we've got all this stuff under the roof and we're finally making money on a reoccurring revenue basis with managing this stuff, and now you're starting to leak this stuff out. Yeah. So I'm using you as the bad guy. The reality is they still have the same equipment under roof.
Right.
It's just that a certain portion of the data is now up in a collaborative cloud.
Right.
Okay.
And I would even say that the majority of the services like an organization like Augusta provides tends to be more around the end user support side. The infrastructure, especially if it's designed well, it tends to run itself. So when I sit down with a client and we're looking at Google Apps and we're talking through the agreement and what's covered in the agreement, there's really no change. Because again, the types of services we're providing in a premise-based environment with, like, let's say, Exchange, doesn't change that much because the majority of the work is all on the end user side.
Okay, so, Microsoft's got, okay, how is this, you're talking about using features of the Google App Stack, which is, Google Docs, Google Spreadsheets, Google Sites, which I want you to, we're going to save that for a little bit later because that's really powerful, and we got to talk about Google Sites.
Yeah.
By the way, that's, the only translation point I can give the IT Nation is what they would understand in their current world. I guess I would liken that to SharePoint.
Yeah.
Except it's up in the cloud. So I want to talk about Sites. So, you get the traditional Office stack. It has a way of integrating all those things and doing things there. So, I'm going to kind of ask you to tell me how is the Google way of doing it different? I don't know many people that kind of do the macroing and the scripting and all of that jazz that you could do with Office. We do it, but I don't know many of the people out in the IT Nation that do that. So,
from my opinion, the feedback I've gotten from my clients is that the tool set seems to be about 70% of all the bells and whistles of, let's say, a Microsoft Office environment. But it's the 70% that everybody uses. And so, like in the example of like docs or spreadsheets, it's the common everyday functions that you just need to have on hand, and accessibility. The cool thing about it is the fact that since it's in the cloud, you can access the data anywhere you are. So in the particular example
That's
of
huge.
Going back to Second Wind, they have district managers that bounce from every single store within their region. And so the ability for them to go to a store and pull up a spreadsheet with some specific sales data, like let's say they're trying to push a new product,
Right.
and be able to pull that up there and do some training around it, and then go to the next store and access it without having to VPN back in and grab data off the on-premise infrastructure, but it's just sitting right there. Or maybe they pop into a coffee shop because they've got a couple extra hours before the next meeting, and being able to just access that data. So the accessibility and the ease of use we've seen become really almost disruptive to some of the normal behaviors that we've seen end users just living their day-to-day lives. It changed it, and all of a sudden, like, wow, I can think about this a little differently, and I can approach it a little differently now.
Yeah, I think it's our Google application suite themselves. We built the applications originally starting with Gmail. Now it's almost 6 years ago now for consumers. A lot of the other applications in the suite, from the productivity applications, calendar, and so forth, there is a consumer component. I think a lot of users who are consumers who are also employees, right, bring this to work. So a lot of this usage paradigm is intuitive. The other thing that I think is that when we look at these applications, which have all been built up and continue to be built today, it's Web 2.0 is now 5 years ago, and now we're in the age of social networking,
Right.
and there's just a different usage paradigm. You're talking about access paradigms and being able to access data from anywhere, but even just the way that teams collaborate. The Google Apps is really, the design tenets of the applications are around teams working together and being productive. So really, collaboration. It's not just these applications hosted over here. It's really the individual features in terms of how the applications integrate with one another.